Picture standing in the misty hills of ancient Europe, where the wind carries whispers of a people who once shaped history, then vanished without a trace. The Celtic tribes were masters of art, warriors of legend, and keepers of secrets so profound, their echoes still ripple through time. They built no sprawling cities like Rome, left no towering monuments like Egypt, yet their influence lingers in the stories we tell, the traditions we keep, and the mysteries we've yet to solve. What if I told you that buried beneath layers of myth and fragmented history, there are clues hidden in plain sight that reveal the astonishing truth about who they really were? For centuries, the Celts were shrouded in shadow, dismissed as barbarians by their enemies or romanticized as noble savages by later generations. But modern archaeology and painstaking research have begun to peel back the layers, uncovering a civilization far more sophisticated, far more mysterious than anyone imagined. From their sacred groves where Druids communed with the gods, to their intricate metalwork that seemed to defy the technology of the age, the Celts were anything but primitive. They were poets, astronomers, and strategists whose secrets were guarded so fiercely, even their own descendants struggled to preserve them. That's exactly what we're about to explore together. In this journey, we'll unearth 25 hidden secrets of the Celtic tribes' revelations that will challenge everything you thought you knew. How did they construct their legendary weapons, said to be imbued with supernatural power? What coded messages lie hidden in their knotwork designs? And why did so many of their greatest settlements simply disappear? Each secret is a thread in a larger tapestry, one that connects us to a world where magic and reality blurred, where every hill and river held a story. So come with me, let's step into the mist and uncover the truth behind one of history's most enigmatic civilizations. Among the towering standing stones and moss-covered ruins of ancient Celtic lands, you might notice strange markings, slender lines carved into rock, branching like the veins of a leaf or the bare limbs of a winter tree. This is Ogham, the lost script of the Celts, a language so enigmatic that even its name carries whispers of the otherworld. Unlike the flowing letters of Latin or Greek, Ogham is stark, composed of straight notches and lines, as if the very trees themselves had a voice. But this was more than just a way to record names or events. Some believe these carvings were a bridge between worlds, a sacred code meant to channel the power of the unseen. The mystery begins with how Ogham works. Each character represents a letter, but they're grouped in ways that seem almost mathematical lines cutting across a central stem, sometimes single, sometimes clustered like the feathers of an arrow. Early scholars thought it was simple memorial text marking the graves of chieftains or warriors, but then something strange emerged. Many Ogham stones weren't placed in graveyards at all. They stood at the borders of territories, near sacred springs, or deep in the heart of untouched forests. Were they warnings, prayers, or perhaps something older, something tied to the Druids and their secret rites? One of the most astonishing discoveries came in the rugged hills of County Kerry, where a stone slab bore an Ogham inscription next to a Christian cross, proof that this ancient script survived long after Rome fell, maybe even as a hidden language among those who clung to the old ways. But the real revelation was found in Wales, where a stone's Ogham markings weren't just names, but fragments of poetry, spells, or maybe even star maps. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. Ogham wasn't just writing. It was a key, one that might unlock the deepest beliefs of a people who saw words as sacred as alive. So the next time you walk past an old stone, take a closer look. Those weathered lines might be more than scratches, they might be the last echoes of a forgotten magic. The Druids weren't just priests or healers, they were the living libraries of the Celtic world, holding knowledge so sacred it was forbidden to write it down. Imagine a class of scholars who could chart the movements of stars without telescopes, brew remedies from plants modern science is still unraveling, and recite histories spanning generations entirely from memory. This wasn't just education, it was power guarded so fiercely that even Julius Caesar, who wrote about them with equal parts fascination and fear, admitted he never fully grasped their secrets. What made their knowledge so dangerous? For one, their understanding of astronomy was shockingly precise. Stone circles like Stonehenge, often mislabeled as purely Neolithic, show signs of Celtic use, alignments that mark solstices, lunar cycles, even eclipses. But here's the twist. Unlike the Greeks or Egyptians, the Druids left no star charts or written calculations. Their mastery was oral, passed down through meticulously trained initiates in verses so complex, a single mistake could mean expulsion. Some researchers believe this wasn't just tradition, it was intentional. By keeping knowledge unwritten, they ensured it couldn't be stolen, corrupted, or used against their people. Then there's the matter of their medicine. Ancient texts from rival cultures describe Celtic healers performing surgeries, using antiseptics like garlic and honey, even administering sedatives from poppy extract. But the Druids went further. They saw illness as imbalance, treating the body and spirit as one. A cure might involve herbs, yes, but also chants, rituals, and alignments with sacred trees or waterways. Modern scientists have confirmed the antibacterial properties of many plants they used, yet the full scope of their pharmacopoeia lost. The greatest mystery, though, is what might have been destroyed. Roman accounts mention Wicca books, possibly bark or wood tablets filled with Ogham script burned during the conquest of Gaul. Medieval monks later wrote of finding strange, pagan manuscripts they opted not to copy. Could these have been Druidic texts? We'll never know for certain, but perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in Ireland, where Christian monks preserved fragments of lore, subtly blending Druidic star lore into their own illuminated gospels. Look closely at the Book of Kells, and you'll find constellations hidden in the margins, as if the old ways refused to die quietly. So why does this matter today? Because the Druids' legacy challenges our obsession with recording everything. They proved knowledge could thrive without ink or parchment, surviving centuries in the human mind. And that's the real secret. Sometimes the most powerful truths aren't written, they're remembered. Beneath the tangled canopy of ancient oaks, where sunlight filters like liquid gold through the leaves, the Celts believed the gods walked closest to earth. Unlike the grand temples of Greece or the soaring cathedrals of later ages, their sanctuaries weren't built of stone, they grew. Sacred groves were the beating heart of Celtic spirituality, living cathedrals where every rustling branch, every gnarled root pulsed with divine presence. These weren't just places of worship, they were thresholds where the veil between worlds grew thin enough to touch. The choice of groves was no accident. Trees held profound meaning for the Celts. Oaks symbolized strength and wisdom. Hazels were tied to poetic inspiration, and yews marked portals to the afterlife. But certain groves were different. Historical accounts describe clearings where the trees grew in perfect circles, their trunks carved with spirals or Ogham script, their branches hung with offerings of carved bone and woven hair. Roman writers, baffled by these open-air temples, reported that even birds refused to nest there, as if the air itself hummed with something unnatural. What truly happened in these groves? Druidic rituals were cloaked in secrecy, but fragments survive. At the heart of the sanctuary stood the bile, a single sacred tree, often an oak centuries old, believed to be the axis of the world. Here, Druids performed rites tied to the seasons, whispering incantations as they cut mistletoe with golden sickles, a plant they called the healer of all things. Some groves doubled as courts, where disputes were settled under the watchful eyes of the gods, while others served as astronomical observatories with specific trees aligning to solstice sunrises. Then came the Romans, convinced the groves were hubs of rebellion, and perhaps unnerved by their eerie power, legions torched them systematically. Tacitus wrote of sacred oaks reduced to smoldering skeletons, their ashes mixed with salt to barren the land forever. But fire couldn't erase everything. In Gaul, a Roman soldier's journal describes a grove where the trees bled when axed and the air filled with wails, as if the earth itself mourned. Whether myth or memory, one thing's clear: these weren't just trees, they were witnesses. Today, archaeologists hunt for echoes of these lost sanctuaries. In Germany, LiDAR scans revealed a hidden ring of post holes beneath a medieval church, the ghostly footprint of a Druidic grove. In Ireland, a lightning-struck oak near Tara was found to have roots entwined with Iron Age artifacts, suggesting centuries of ritual use. And in Wales, a farmer stumbled upon a spring guarded by 9 ewes, their trunks etched with symbols matching Pliny's descriptions of Celtic water rites. But perhaps the most haunting clue lies in folklore. In Brittany, villagers still speak of Andraug Red, the old paths, woodland trails that twist unnaturally, said to follow the borders of vanished groves. Walk them at dusk, they warn, and you might hear whispers in a language no one's spoken for 2,000 years. The Celts knew some truths are too vast for walls. Their temples were alive, breathing with the wind, and though the axes came, the roots remember. To the Celtic warrior, a severed head was far more than a battle trophy. It was a vessel of power, a sacred key to the otherworld. Ancient texts describe champions returning from combat with grisly cargo, enemies' heads dangling from chariot rails or strung like ghastly ornaments around their horses' necks. The Romans recoiled at this practice, branding it barbaric, but to the Celts it was deeply spiritual. They believed the soul resided in the skull, that by taking a head you captured not just a life, but the very essence of your foe's strength, wisdom, and courage. This wasn't mere brutality, it was a sacred transaction between worlds. The process of preservation reveals startling sophistication. Greek historian Diodorus Siculus wrote of Celts embalming heads with cedar oil, keeping them in ornate chests to show honored guests like precious heirlooms. Archaeology confirms this. At the sanctuary of Roquepatus in southern France, stone pillars were found embedded with human skulls, some still bearing traces of ceremonial paint, their eye sockets stuffed with clay or sealed with bronze coins to contain the spirit within. Even more chilling, many skulls showed no battle wounds, suggesting victims were taken alive for ritual beheading. But why display them at sacred sites? The answer lies in the Celtic cosmos. Heads weren't just mounted on gates as warnings, they adorned temples as offerings. At Entremont, another Gaulish shrine, skulls were meticulously nailed to wooden beams in rows, their jaws removed possibly to prevent vengeful spirits from speaking. Some scholars argue these head cults mirrored older Mediterranean traditions, where displayed skulls were thought to bless the land with fertility. Others point to legends like that of Bran the Blessed, whose talking head protected Britain after death, proving to the Celts that consciousness lingered in the severed skull. Modern technology has peeled back even darker layers. CT scans of Roquepatus skulls revealed minute carving spirals and triskells, etched into the bone with flint tools. These weren't random marks, they matched symbols found on votive offerings, suggesting each head was activated as a guardian spirit. Perhaps most haunting of all, at Ribeaumont-sur-Ancre in Picardy, archaeologists unearthed a pit containing over 2,000 skulls stacked like bricks, their spinal columns still attached, a macabre architecture hinting at rituals so secret even the Romans dared not record them. So next time you see a Celtic knotwork design, look closely. Those interlacing lines might be more than decoration. They could be stylized heads woven into art as eternal guardians. The Celts didn't fear death, they whispered to it, held it in their hands, and in doing so turned mortality into a kind of dark, defiant magic. For the Celts, death wasn't an end, it was a doorway, and the otherworld waited just beyond the veil, shimmering like a reflection in still water. This wasn't some distant heaven or fiery underworld, but a parallel realm of eternal youth, feasting, and music, where time flowed backward and sorrow couldn't take root. Imagine a place where apple trees bore fruit year-round, where rivers ran with honey, and where the dead walked hand in hand with the living, their faces unlined by age. The Otherworld wasn't a myth to the Celts, it was geography. They knew its entrances, burial mounds that hummed with energy, lakes that never gave up their drowned, caves where whispers echoed in languages no one could name. One of the most haunting accounts comes from the Voyage of Bran, an Irish tale where the hero sails west until the sea turns to glass and the sky melts into the horizon. There he finds an island where laughter hangs in the air like mist, where a single day lasts a century, and where the people glow with an inner light. But here's the twist: when Bran finally returns home, his crew realizes they've been gone not years, but centuries, proof that the Otherworld existed outside time. Similar stories ripple through Welsh lore, like the tale of Rhiannon, who rides from a burial mound on a horse that moves slower than a shadow, yet no one can catch her. These weren't just fables, they were maps showing the living how to navigate the thin places between worlds. What makes the Otherworld stand out from other ancient afterlife beliefs? Unlike the Greek Hades or the Egyptian Duat, it wasn't a land of judgment or rebirth. The Celts didn't weigh souls on scales or ferry them across rivers of fire. Their Otherworld was achingly close, a mirror realm where the rules of our world dissolved. Archaeologists have found proof of this intimacy. Offerings dropped into lakes like keys to hidden doors, swords bent and tossed into bogs as gifts for the gods, even entire chariots submerged in watery graves, possibly sent with the dead for their journey. At Llyn Cerrig Bach in Wales, over 150 such objects were pulled from the depths, each one ritually killed before deposition, as if to release their spirits for use in the Otherworld. But the most compelling evidence lies in the landscape itself. Newgrange, Ireland's massive passage tomb, aligns with the winter solstice sunrise, flooding its inner chamber with light for 17 minutes, a phenomenon some scholars believe recreated the Otherworld's radiance for the dead buried within. Nearby at the Hill of Tara, ancient annals describe a portal called the Tech Duin, the House of Dawn, where souls gathered before crossing over. Folklore insists that even now, on certain nights, the walls between worlds grow translucent. Fishermen off the coast of Brittany still report seeing ghostly islands on the horizon, while in Scotland, walkers tell of vanishing paths that lead to meadows where the grass sways to silent music. Perhaps the most poignant clue comes from a 1st century Roman account of Celtic funeral rites. Mourners didn't wear black, they dressed in green, the color of life. They feasted beside graves, passing cups to the departed as if they were merely in the next room. Because to the Celts they were. The Otherworld wasn't a distant reward, it was a breath away, a truth written into the land itself, waiting just beyond the corner of your eye. Beneath the rolling green hills of Ireland and the riverbanks of Gaul, the earth still holds the glimmering secrets of a people who mastered metal in ways that baffled the ancient world. The Celts weren't just skilled goldsmiths, they were alchemists, transforming raw ore into objects so intricate, so radiant, that even their enemies whispered of divine intervention. Take the Broita gold, a treasure hauled from the mudflats of Northern Ireland in the late 19th century. This wasn't just a hoard, it was a masterpiece. A miniature boat with oars that actually rotated, a torque so finely woven it seemed spun from sunlight, and collars adorned with patterns too precise for Iron Age tools. How did they achieve such perfection without magnifying lenses or modern alloys? The answer lies in a technique modern jewelers still struggle to replicate: granulation, where tiny gold beads are fused to a surface with such precision, they appear to grow organically like dew on a leaf. But the real mystery isn't just how they worked gold, it's why so much of it vanished. Across Europe, from the Rhine Valley to the Scottish Highlands, buried hoards surface with eerie regularity. The Snettisham treasure in England contained over 200 torques, some deliberately twisted or broken before burial. The Niederseer hoard in Germany held coins stacked like offerings, sealed in clay urns. Why hide such wealth? One theory points to ritual. The Celts saw gold as sacred, a metal that captured the essence of the sun god. Burying it may have been an act of communion, returning energy to the earth to ensure fertility or victory in battle. Roman accounts describe Druids tossing gold into sacred lakes to appease the gods of the deep, while Irish myths speak of kings hiding their treasure, where only the roots of oak trees could whisper of its place. Yet there's a darker possibility. As Rome's legions advanced, Celtic tribes faced annihilation, hordes buried in haste, like the ones found with weapons still clasped around them, suggest panic, a last-ditch effort to keep wealth from enemy hands. But some caches tell a subtler story. At Taillac in France, gold was buried beneath the threshold of a chieftain's hall, not hidden but planted, as if to consecrate the land for future generations. Modern metallurgists made a startling discovery when analyzing these artifacts. Many contain traces of platinum, a metal the Celts couldn't have knowingly alloyed. The likely source, distant rivers in Iberia or the Balkans, proving their trade network spanned farther than historians ever imagined. Perhaps most haunting of all is what these hoards lack. Unlike Roman gold stamped with emperors' faces, Celtic metalwork rarely depicts rulers. Their wealth wasn't about power, it was about connection. Torques weren't just ornaments, they were believed to channel the wearer's life force, their spiral ends symbolizing the eternal cycle. Even the act of burying gold might have been a kind of prayer, an invitation for the earth to remember. So next time you see a Celtic knot, remember, those twisting lines aren't just decoration. They're the fingerprints of a people who understood gold not as currency, but as a living language, one that still murmurs beneath our feet. The soil of Britain still trembles with the memory of a queen who dared to defy Rome. Boudicca, the flame-haired warrior whose rebellion burned so bright, even the empire's historians couldn't look away. Picture the year 61 AD when Roman tax collectors seized her lands, flogged her bareback, and violated her daughters. Most rulers would have crumbled. Not Boudicca. With a chariot wrapped in blades and an army of 90,000, she became Rome's nightmare, reducing Londinium to ash and slaughtering the 9th Legion in a bloodbath so complete, their bones still surface in fields near Colchester. Her fury wasn't just personal, it was divine. As High Priestess of the Iceni, she rallied tribes under the banner of Andrast, goddess of victory, promising that the very earth would rise against the invaders. Yet for all her triumphs, the final act of Boudicca's story is shrouded in mist. Roman chronicler Tacitus claims she took poison to avoid capture, her body secretly buried by loyalists. Cassius Dio, writing centuries later, insists she fell ill and was given a royal funeral. But here's the twist: neither account matches Celtic tradition. Druidic lore speaks of fallen leaders being interred in riverbeds or bogs, their spirits merging with the land. In Norfolk, locals whisper of a mound near Thetford where the earth glows red at dusk and farmers refuse to plow. Could this be Boudicca's resting place? Then there's the treasure. Roman records mention wagon loads of loot hauled from sacked cities, gold stripped from temples, silver paid as bribes to rival tribes. After her defeat, that wealth vanished. 19th century antiquarians scoured East Anglia, convinced her hoard lay buried beneath Sutton, who, and ironically, they later found Anglo-Saxon gold there instead. But the real clue might lie in a cryptic medieval text describing a queen's ransom hidden where three waters meet. Modern researchers have narrowed it down to the confluence of the Thet, Little Ouse, and Wissey rivers, where sonar scans recently detected unnatural metal deposits 30 feet below the silt. Why was her story nearly lost? Rome had a habit of erasing inconvenient women. Boudicca's name was scrubbed from monuments, her revolt downplayed as a tribal disturbance. For centuries, the only surviving accounts were Roman propaganda, painting her as a screeching savage. Her resurrection began in the Victorian era, when poet Alfred Lord Tennyson recast her as a British folk hero. But the Celts never forgot. Folktales kept her alive, a spectral chariot scene racing through moonlit barley fields, a crimson-haired figure standing guard over buried gold. Today, her legacy is clearer than ever. Forensic archaeology proves the Londinium fire layer matches Tacitus' descriptions, and genetic studies reveal Iceni DNA still strong in East Anglia's population. Boudicca's true power wasn't just in her sword arm, it was in her refusal to be erased. Every time a farmer turns up a Roman helmet split by a Celtic axe, every time the wind howls through the fens like a war horn, her defiance echoes. She wasn't just a queen, she was a storm. In a quiet museum in Lyon, France, rests a shattered bronze tablet that rewrote history's understanding of Celtic science, the Coligny calendar. Discovered in 1897 by a farmer's plough, this 5-foot-long artifact engraved with delicate Celtic script wasn't just a way to mark days. It was a celestial clockwork proving the Druids' mastery of time itself. Unlike the rigid solar calendars of Rome, the Coligny calendar wove together lunar and solar cycles with breathtaking precision, tracking not just seasons but the hidden rhythms of the cosmos. Deciphering its code took decades. The tablet's 64 surviving fragments bore columns of Latin letters, but this was no Roman invention. The Celts had adapted the alphabet to spell out their own language, arranging time into 62 consecutive months, each labeled Mativis lucky or Anmativis unlucky. But here's the revelation. Their months alternated between 29 and 30 days, mirroring the moon's phases, while every 2.5 years they inserted an extra month to realign with the sun. This lunisolar system was so accurate, it deviated from the true solar year by just 1 day every century, a feat the Gregorian calendar wouldn't match until the 1500s. Why such complexity? The Druids saw time as a living force. Certain months, like Simonios, modern October/November, were gateways to the Otherworld, marked by festivals like Samhain, when the veil between worlds thinned. Days weren't just counted, they were weighted. An Anmativis month might forbid planting or marriage, while eclipses and solstices triggered rituals preserved in medieval Irish texts. The calendar's notations include cryptic symbols, a crescent for new moons, a wheel for equinoxes, hinting at ceremonies where time itself was worshipped. The most haunting detail, the Coligny calendar wasn't unique. Fragments of similar bronze plates have surfaced in Switzerland and Austria, suggesting a network of astronomical knowledge spanning Celtic Europe. At the sanctuary of Villars de Heria, archaeologists found pegs that may have been used to adjust wooden calendar wheels, like the one Pliny described Druids consulting before battle. But the true shock came in 2018, when researchers noticed the calendar's 5-year cycle aligned perfectly with Venus's movements, a planet the Celts associated with their horse goddess Epona. Suddenly, those lucky and unlucky days took on new meaning. They might have been celestial warnings guiding kings, harvests, and wars by the stars. Today, as digital clocks flicker, the Coligny calendar whispers a truth we've forgotten. Time isn't just numbers on a screen. To the Celts, it was a song, sung by the moon, the sun, and the turning earth, a song we're only beginning to hear again. The peat bogs of northern Europe hold secrets darker than the black water that fills them, bodies so perfectly preserved. Their fingerprints remain intact after 2,000 years. These are not ordinary corpses. The bog bodies of the Celtic world were offerings, deliberately placed in the murky depths with ropes around their necks or stakes pinning them down. Take Toland man, discovered in Denmark with a noose still tight around his throat, his face so peaceful he might have been sleeping. Or Lindo man, found in England with his stomach full of mistletoe pollen, his skull fractured in a ritual known as the Triple Death. These weren't victims of random violence. Every wound, every carefully arranged limb, whispers of ceremonies meant to bridge the human and divine. Why choose bogs as sacred killing grounds? The answer lies in the Celtic view of wetlands as portals. Unlike rivers or lakes, bogs neither fully give life nor take it. Their waters are stagnant, acidic, eerily suspended between worlds. Sacrifices here were gifts to the gods of fertility and war, a way to ensure bountiful harvests or victory in battle. Forensic analysis reveals haunting details. Many victims were royalty or outcasts, kings fallen from grace, criminals, or possibly druids who'd broken vows. Their last meals often contained hallucinogenic plants, suggesting they were drugged before death. Some, like old Croghan man from Ireland, had their nipples sliced, a symbolic denobling to strip them of royal status before offering. The most chilling insight comes from their skin. The bog's tannins act as natural embalmers, turning flesh to leather and hair to rust red strands. But what's truly startling are the tattoos still visible on some bodies, swirling designs matching those on Celtic metalwork. These weren't mere decorations, they were maps of the soul's journey, perhaps marking the victims as chosen intermediaries. Archaeologists have even found butter and weapons buried nearby, gifts to whatever gods awaited below the peat. Modern science peels back even darker layers. Isotope analysis shows some bog bodies traveled hundreds of miles before death, possibly hostages or tributes between tribes. Others show signs of prolonged torture, broken ribs healed wrong, fingernails worn to stubs from digging. Yet their expressions are serene, implying they went willingly, maybe even eagerly, to their fate. Perhaps the most telling clue lies in what's missing. Unlike Egyptian mummies, bog bodies were never meant to be retrieved. They weren't preserved for an afterlife. They were the afterlife, their souls forever bound to the land they fertilized. So the next time you walk past a deceptively still bog, remember beneath that unassuming surface, the Celts believed the line between sacrifice and salvation was as thin as a knife's edge. High atop the windswept hills of Britain and Gaul, overlooking valleys like silent sentinels, stood the Celtic fortresses, not crude piles of rock, but marvels of military engineering that outwitted invaders for centuries. Take Maiden Castle in Dorset, its multiple concentric earthworks rising like waves frozen in time. From a distance, it might look like just another hill, but that was the genius of its design. The Celts didn't build castles of stone, they sculpted the land itself into weapons. Ramparts weren't just walls, they were optical illusions, their angles calculated so attackers would be funneled into killing zones where spears rained from above. Hidden gullies ran beneath the fortifications, allowing defenders to slip out unseen, while false gates lured enemies into dead-end traps. But why hide their strongholds? The answer lies in how the Celts viewed warfare. Unlike Roman legions who sought open battle, Celtic warriors preferred tactics of deception and psychological terror. A fortress camouflaged as part of the landscape wasn't just defense, it was theatre. At Danebury in England, archaeologists found that the entire eastern approach was designed to disappear in certain light, leaving invaders stumbling blindly. Meanwhile, inside these forts, life thrived in ways that defied their martial purpose. Excavations reveal workshops for glassmaking, intricate jewelers' tools, even remnants of fermented honey mead proof that these were vibrant communities, not just garrisons. The true masterpiece, though, was the escape plan. At Cadbury Castle in Somerset, a secret tunnel, wide enough for a chariot, ran from the central compound straight down to a spring at the hill's base. Similar systems have been found from Spain to Slovakia, always aligning with natural features like rivers or dense forests for cover. Some tunnels even had sound chambers, hollowed-out spaces that amplified footsteps, warning defenders of pursuers long before they arrived. But the most breathtaking revelation came in 2018, when LiDAR scans of the Oppidum of Heidingraben in Germany revealed something invisible to the naked eye. An entire shadow city of trenches and palisades extending miles beyond the known walls. This wasn't just a fortress, it was a landscape transformed into a fortress, with every tree, stream, and slope part of the defense. The Romans called these places oppida, but to the Celts, they were living entities, as much a part of their identity as their gods. So why did so many fall? The answer lies in betrayal, not design. At Maiden Castle, mass graves hold the bodies of those who trusted their walls too well until Roman ballista bolts found weaknesses even the earth couldn't hide. Yet walk those grassy ramparts today and you'll still feel it, the whisper of a people who understood that the best defense isn't just strength, but the art of vanishing in plain sight. To the Celtic tribes, a horse was far more than a mere animal. It was a living bridge between earth and sky, a creature so sacred that warriors whispered prayers into their manes before battle. Across Europe, from the windswept plains of Gaul to the rocky highlands of Scotland, archaeological digs keep unearthing proof of this obsession. Bronze figurines of stallions with exaggerated, rippling muscles. Chariot fittings adorned with swirling horse motifs. Even the bones of real horses buried alongside their owners with such care, their legs arranged as if ready to gallop into the afterlife. The Celts didn't just ride horses, they worshipped them, fought alongside them, and wove them into the very fabric of their myths. Chariot warfare was their ultimate innovation. Forget the lumbering Roman war machines. Celtic chariots were lightweight, agile death traps. Julius Caesar himself described their terror in his Gallic wars, how warriors would charge at full speed, leap onto the chariot's pole to hurl javelins, then dance back to the reins like acrobats. The secret lay in their construction. Excavations at sites like Wetwang in England revealed chariots with spiked wheels and flexible willow wood frames that absorbed shock, allowing hairpin turns no horse could manage alone. But the true brilliance was psychological. Before battle, Celts would attach bronze rattles to their chariots, creating a cacophony that sounded like an entire cavalry approaching from all directions. Then there's Epona, the horse goddess whose influence stretched so far, even the Roman army adopted her. Unlike other Celtic deities tied to specific tribes, Epona's carvings appear from Scotland to Romania, always depicted side saddle, often holding fruit or grain, symbolizing her dual role as protector of horses and fertility. At Burgundy's Alesia, a temple complex dedicated to her held an eerie discovery. Dozens of horse skulls arranged in a spiral, their teeth stained with offerings of fermented milk. But the most haunting tribute came from the Ardennes forest, where a 1st-century pit contained 7 fully harnessed horses buried nose to tail, their bridle bits engraved with Ogham script, likely a plea for divine intervention against Roman invaders. The mythology runs deeper. Irish legends speak of the Each shape-shifting water horses that lured riders to drowning, while Welsh tales describe the Cephal Dwr, a spectral steed that emerged from mist to carry heroes to the Otherworld. Even the landscape echoed this reverence. Hill figures like England's Uffington White Horse, carved into chalk bedrock over 3,000 years ago, were likely pilgrimage sites where rituals unfolded under the watchful eye of the horse god. What's truly astonishing is how this bond transcended death. At Vergina in northern Greece, a Celtic chieftain's tomb contained his horse buried standing upright, its hooves bolted to a bronze platform so it would stand forever in the afterlife. Similar graves across Europe show horses wearing ceremonial armor, their coats once painted with woad blue or blood red. These weren't mere status symbols, they were soul guides trusted to carry their riders through the veil. Today, geneticists studying ancient horse DNA made a startling find. Certain modern Irish ponies share lineage with bones excavated from Celtic sites. The descendants of those sacred steeds still walk among us, their bloodline unbroken, as if the land itself refuses to let the old bonds fade. Deep in the rugged highlands of ancient Thrace, where modern-day Bulgaria meets the Black Sea, lies one of the Celtic world's most enduring enigmas, the lost city of Tyles. Founded in the 3rd century BC by Celtic tribes who'd migrated from the Danube, Tyles wasn't just a settlement. It was a powerhouse, a kingdom that minted its own coins, forged alliances with Greek city-states, and even extorted tribute from Byzantium. For nearly 60 years, it thrived as a cultural crossroads where Celtic warriors bartered with Greek merchants and Thracian shamans. Then, like smoke on the wind, it disappeared. No ruins, no chronicles, not even a definitive location marked on maps. Tyles simply vanished, leaving behind only whispers in the histories of its enemies. The search for Tyles has driven archaeologists to obsession. Ancient historian Polybius described it as a city of towering wooden walls perched where three rivers meet. Yet modern surveys of the proposed areas near Stara Zagora or the Tunya River reveal no traces of such a fortress. The key might lie in the Celts' unique building practices. Unlike stone-reliant Mediterranean cultures, they constructed with timber and earthworks, materials that rot or blend into the landscape over centuries. Lidea scans in 2019 uncovered a series of unnatural plateaus near Kazanlak, their outlines matching Celtic hillfort designs, but the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source: local folklore. Villagers in the Balkan Mountains have long spoken of Gradishtito, the place of the old city, where the ground is littered with iron slag and strange, flattened stones, possible remnants of Tyles' fabled mint. Why would a thriving city be abandoned? The usual suspects: war, famine, plague don't fully fit. Coins minted in Tyles' final years show a curious detail. Their silver content drops sharply, replaced by copper. This wasn't mere economic decline, it was desperation. Climate data from ice cores reveals a catastrophic drought around 218 BC, around the time Tyles fades from records. Starving, its people may have fractured, some joining Thracian tribes, others retreating north to Celtic homelands. But the darkest clue comes from a nearby Thracian tomb, where archaeologists found a mass grave filled with skeletons bearing Celtic-style torques and head wounds consistent with ritual execution. The most haunting theory: Tyles didn't fall, it was erased intentionally. Celtic tradition held that certain places became cursed by repeated bloodshed. If Tyles' leaders believed the land itself had turned against them, they might have burned their own city and scattered its ashes, a final act of defiance against fate. Today, the hunt continues. Every so often, a farmer plows up a coin stamped with the enigmatic Tyles, or a storm exposes a cache of spearheads. The earth hasn't given up all its secrets yet. Somewhere beneath those rolling green hills, the ghost of a kingdom waits. Long before carved pumpkins lit up doorsteps and children shouted, "Trick or treat," the ancient Celts marked the end of harvest with a night so potent they believed the dead walked among the living. Samhain, pronounced so-in, wasn't just a festival, it was the hinge between worlds, when the veil between the living and the dead grew thin as mist. Falling on the eve of November 1st, this sacred night crackled with danger and possibility. Bonfires roared on hilltops, not for warmth but as beacons to guide lost spirits home, or to frighten away those with darker intentions. The Celts didn't celebrate death. They negotiated with it, setting places at their tables for ancestors and leaving offerings of bread and apples at crossroads to appease restless souls. The rituals of Samhain reveal a people deeply attuned to nature's cycles. Druids performed elaborate divination ceremonies, reading the future in the cracks of burning hazelnuts or the shapes of thrown bones. Families extinguished their hearth fires completely, then relit them from the sacred communal bonfire, symbolizing unity against the coming winter's darkness. But the most striking tradition was the wearing of disguises. Villagers clothed themselves in animal skins and grotesque masks, not for merriment but as camouflage, to confuse malignant spirits who might recognize them as human. In Ireland, young men went souling, door to door, reciting verses in exchange for food, a direct ancestor of modern trick-or-treating. How did these practices morph into Halloween? The transformation began when Christian missionaries, unable to stamp out Samhain's deep-rooted power, rebranded it as All Hallows' Eve, yet the old ways refused to die. The Jack-o'-lantern, for instance, descended from the Celtic legend of Stingy Jack, a trickster doomed to wander with only a hollowed turnip holding a coal from hell. Irish immigrants later swapped turnips for pumpkins in America, birthing an icon. Even Dumb Supper, the silent meal where Celts communed with the dead, resurfaces in Mexico's Day of the Dead and Sicily's Night of the Ancestors. Archaeology confirms this continuity. At the Hill of Ward in Ireland, excavations uncovered evidence of massive Samhain bonfires dating back 2,500 years, their ash layers mingled with animal bones, likely sacrificial offerings. Nearby, a 1st-century cauldron was found filled with hallucinogenic herbs, hinting at druidic trances to peer beyond the veil. Most chilling, Ogham inscribed stones placed in doorways, their inscriptions still legible, warnings to spirits that this home was protected. Today, when you light a candle inside a pumpkin or bob for apples, you're not just following a trend, you're partaking in a ritual older than Rome, a night when the Celtic world stood still, held its breath, and whispered to the darkness. The modern might have sanitized it, but the magic remains. Samhain never ended, it simply learned new names. In the mist-shrouded forests of ancient Ireland, where the laws of men held no sway, an elite brotherhood of warriors moved like shadows, the Fianna. Bound by neither king nor clan, these men were a law unto themselves, living by a code so strict, even their legendary strength paled beside their discipline. To join their ranks wasn't just a matter of skill, it was a trial by fire, body, and soul. Candidates faced tests no ordinary warrior could survive, running through tangled woodlands without breaking a single branch, reciting poetry while standing neck-deep in freezing water, or defending themselves blindfolded against 6 armed attackers. Those who succeeded weren't just fighters, they became something between men and myths, sworn to protect the land from threats seen and unseen. The Fianna's most famous leader, Fionn mac Cumhaill, embodied their ideals. Tales describe him gaining wisdom not from battle, but by accidentally tasting the salmon of knowledge, a mythical fish that granted omniscience. Yet even Fionn had to prove himself. Legend says he faced the fire-breathing fairy Aelin every Samhain, using music alone to lull the creature into vulnerability. Such stories weren't mere entertainment, they were moral compasses, teaching that true strength lay in cunning as much as brute force. Archaeological finds back this up. In the Beara Peninsula, a cave system revealed Ogham carvings alongside broken weapons, suggesting initiates may have staged ritual combats in total darkness. What set the Fianna apart from other warrior bands? Their unique social status. While most Celtic fighters answered to tribal chiefs, the Fianna operated as a mobile force, living off the land like medieval rangers. Historical accounts describe them hunting wolves to protect villages, mediating disputes between clans, and even serving as mercenaries for kings, but always on their own terms. Their loyalty wasn't bought, it was earned. A king who broke his word might find the Fianna vanishing overnight, leaving his borders undefended. This independence terrified Rome. Records from the invasion of Britain mention legionaries avoiding regions where the wild bands were rumored to roam. Parallels to other warrior societies are striking. Like the Norse berserkers, the Fianna reportedly entered battle in frenzied states, their war cries said to freeze blood. Yet, unlike berserkers, they also mastered poetry, law, and healing, a balance echoed in the samurai's Bushido code or the knightly orders of medieval Europe. Perhaps the most intriguing link is to the Spartan agoge. Both groups took boys for training at young ages, subjected them to harsh wilderness survival tests, and instilled unwavering loyalty to their brothers in arms. But the Fianna's true legacy lies in their disappearance. By the 12th century, they'd faded into folklore, their tales preserved by Christian monks who sanitized their pagan roots. Yet walk Ireland's backcountry today, and you'll still hear whispers. Farmers point to overgrown ring forts they call Fianna sleeping places, claiming the warriors lie buried upright, weapons ready, waiting for Ireland's hour of greatest need. Whether myth or memory, one thing's certain: the Fianna remind us that sometimes the fiercest protectors are those who answer to no one except the land itself. Hidden within the whispering leaves of ancient forests lies a secret language, one where every stroke carved into stone or wood wasn't just a letter, but a living piece of the natural world. The Ogham alphabet, often called the Celtic tree alphabet, was far more than a writing system. Each of its 20 characters represented a sacred tree, its shape mirroring the branching veins of a leaf or the upright stance of a sapling. To the Celts, these weren't just symbols, they were portals linking the mundane world to the wisdom of the earth itself. Take the first letter, Beeth, shaped like a single upward line, the birch tree. Associated with new beginnings, it was used to carve protective charms on cradles or doorposts. Next, Lewis, the rowan, its character resembling a forked branch, was etched onto shields for its legendary power to ward off evil. The oak jaw, with its sturdy horizontal lines, symbolized strength and became the Druids' most sacred tree, its name giving root to the word door, a gateway to wisdom. But here's the twist: this alphabet wasn't just for writing. It was a divinatory tool, a way to listen to the earth's whispers. Druids would cut strips of wood from each tree, inscribe them with Ogham, and cast them like runes onto a white cloth. How they landed crossed, upright, or reversed revealed messages from the spirit world. A spread dominated by sail, the willow, might warn of hidden sorrows, while Coll, the hazel, signaled inspiration striking like lightning. The most potent of all was Idaho, the yew, its character a stark vertical line flanked by shorter strokes, a visual echo of its poisonous berries and immortal nature. Finding it in a casting meant transformation or death, for yews often grew in graveyards, their roots tangled with bones. Archaeology confirms this practice wasn't mere legend. At the Uli Shrine in England, hazel rods inscribed with Ogham were found bundled together, their ends charred, likely used in fireside divination. In County Kerry, a stone slab bears Ogham letters alongside grooves where Druids may have slid their fingers to read the tree's energy tactilely. Even today, remnants linger. Scottish Highlanders still practice crancher, tossing wooden staves for guidance, while Irish hedge schools preserved Ogham's tree lore well into the 19th century. The true magic of this alphabet lies in its impermanence. Unlike ink on parchment, Ogham was often carved into living trees, the letters stretching and warping as the bark grew. A message to the gods might vanish in a decade, absorbed back into the earth, proof that to the Celts, language wasn't meant to conquer time but to dance with it. So the next time you pass a grove, remember, those rustling leaves might still be speaking in a code we've almost forgotten. Beneath the churning waves of the North Atlantic and the silt of European riverbeds lies one of the Celtic world's greatest mysteries, their vanished ships. While the Vikings dominate our imagination of ancient seafarers, the Celts were master shipbuilders centuries earlier, crafting vessels so advanced Roman historians wrote of their sea dragons with a mix of awe and terror. Yet today, barely a handful of Celtic ships have ever been found, their secrets swallowed by time and tide. How could a people who ruled the waves leave so little behind? The answer begins with their revolutionary design: sleek, oak-planked hulls stitched together with flexible yew roots, allowing them to flex like living creatures in stormy seas. Unlike Mediterranean galleys, Celtic ships had high prows to conquer Atlantic swells and waterproofed sails made from animal skins treated with beeswax. These weren't just boats, they were floating fortresses, some large enough to carry 50 warriors and their chariots into battle. The scarcity of wrecks tells a haunting story. Celtic shipbuilders avoided nails, using intricate joinery and organic materials that decayed completely within centuries. Only in rare environments like the anaerobic mud of Denmark's Roskilde Fjord do fragments survive. There, in 1962, archaeologists uncovered the H. Jordspring boat, a Celtic-inspired vessel dating to 350 BC, its clinker-built design echoing descriptions of Gaulish warships. Even more telling are the ritual depositions. At Llyn Cerrig Boch in Wales, over 150 metal artifacts, including ship fittings, were found deliberately bent and thrown into a lake, offerings to water gods, perhaps ensuring safe voyages for the fleet. But the real enigma lies in where these ships might have gone. Greek explorer Pytheas wrote of Celtic traders reaching Thule, an icy land 6 days north of Britain, possibly Iceland or even the edge of the Arctic. Carthaginian records mention fair-haired men from the north trading tin in the markets of Gadea, while Roman maps show phantom islands west of Ireland labeled Hibernia Ultima, lands some believe the Celts knew but kept secret. The most tantalizing clue comes from Newfoundland, where a 9th century Irish-style drystone hut was discovered atop older, charcoal-stained hearths, evidence of pre-Viking crossings. Perhaps the greatest testament to their nautical prowess is how thoroughly their enemies feared it. Julius Caesar described Venetian ships in Brittany with hulls so thick Roman ramming tactics failed, forcing his navy to resort to boarding hooks and fire. Yet by the Middle Ages, this knowledge had faded so completely medieval monks assumed the Celts were landlocked farmers. Only now, as underwater archaeologists scan the continental shelf with sonar, are whispers of their maritime legacy resurfacing, a ghost fleet waiting in the deep, holding stories of voyages we've yet to imagine. At first glance, Celtic knots might seem like mere decoration, endless loops of ribbon woven into crosses or carved onto stone. But look closer and you'll notice something unsettling. There's no beginning and no end. That's no accident. These intricate designs were far more than artwork. They were sacred geometry, a visual language encoding beliefs about life, death, and the fabric of the universe itself. The most common theory suggests the endless loops symbolize eternity, mirroring the Celtic view of the soul's cyclical journey. Yet dig deeper and the knots reveal stranger secrets. Some scholars argue their complexity was intentional, a way to trap evil spirits in maze-like patterns, much like the labyrinth myths of ancient Crete. The Book of Kells, that masterpiece of medieval illumination, holds tantalizing clues. Zoom in on its ornate borders, and you'll spot knots so precise they could only have been drawn with magnifying lenses, technology supposedly unknown in 9th century Ireland. Even stranger, certain pages contain knots that form hidden faces when viewed from different angles, possibly representing watchful deities or ancestral spirits. Similar illusions appear on the Tyrone stone in Galway, where spirals morph into serpents if you stare long enough, echoing the Celtic reverence for shapeshifters. But the most provocative theory comes from Ogham experts. Some knots, when mapped onto tree alphabets, spell out names or prayers, a covert form of writing during times when Druidic knowledge was suppressed. At the Kilmalcadar Church in County Kerry, a knot-carved stone aligns perfectly with the winter solstice sunrise, its shadow casting what looks like Ogham script on the chapel floor for just 17 minutes each year. Coincidence unlikely. The military applications are even more surprising. Celtic shields recovered from the River Thames bear knot patterns that, when spun, create optical illusions, making warriors appear to move faster or even multiply in battle. Roman accounts describe entire phalanxes freezing in confusion at the site. Meanwhile, in Scotland, excavation of a broch revealed knotted carvings positioned to catch moonlight at specific phases, possibly serving as lunar calendars. Perhaps the greatest testament to their power lies in what happened to them. As Christianity spread, monks didn't destroy pagan knots. They appropriated them, weaving crosses into the designs as if to sanctify their magic. That's why today, these ancient patterns still adorn churches and jewelry, their original meaning blurred but never broken. The knots were never meant to be solved, only witnessed, a reminder that some mysteries are too vast for straight lines. The legend of Atlantis, the fabled island kingdom swallowed by the sea, has haunted humanity for millennia. But what if this wasn't just a Greek tale? What if the Celts knew it firsthand? Fringe historians and archaeologists have long noted eerie parallels between Plato's descriptions of Atlantis and the Celtic world's lost maritime glory. Plato wrote of Atlantis as a hub of advanced metalworkers, masters of an alloy called orichalcum that shone like fire. Now consider the Celts, whose goldsmithing techniques like the broiter collar's microscopic granulation were so precise modern jewelers still debate how they achieved it without lenses. Both cultures worshipped bulls, built circular stone monuments aligned to stars, and told of catastrophic floods erasing their ancestors' homelands. Coincidence? Or something far stranger, the maritime connections run deeper. Plato's Atlantis allegedly lay beyond the Pillars of Hercules, modern Gibraltar, a region the Celts dominated as early as the 6th century BC. Carthaginian traders reported encountering white-haired seafarers near the Azores, islands some theorists linked to Atlantis. Even more compelling are Celtic ship designs. Unlike Mediterranean galleys built for calm seas, Celtic vessels like the Currach flexible, hide-covered boats could survive Atlantic storms, much like the great ships Plato claimed Atlanteans used to conquer distant lands. At the Spanish shipwreck site of Ribadio, archaeologists found bronze Atlantean-style anchors alongside Celtic torques, suggesting cultural exchange or shared origins. Then there's the timing. Plato dated Atlantis's fall to around 9,600 BC, but newer geological studies reveal the Storegga slide, a massive underwater landslide off Norway, triggered tsunamis that flooded Doggerland, a Mesolithic land bridge connecting Britain to Europe around 6,200 BC. Celtic oral traditions speak of Lyoness, a sunken kingdom off Cornwall, and Cantref Gwaelod in Wales, lost when the wells burst. Could these be fractured memories of a real cataclysm? The most tantalizing clue lies in genetics. DNA analysis of the Basque people, who share linguistic ties to Celtic groups, reveals a unique marker also found in coastal Berbers, hinting at prehistoric transatlantic voyages. Meanwhile, Ogham-like carvings appear on stones in West Virginia and Brazil, fueling speculation that Celtic sailors beat Columbus by millennia. Of course, mainstream academia dismisses these claims, but consider this. The Greek explorer Pytheas wrote of a Celtic priest showing him an ancient map of lands beyond the sunset. That map, like Atlantis itself, is lost to time. Perhaps the truth lies not in proving Atlantis was Celtic, but in recognizing how legends crystallize around real disasters. The Celts, like the Atlanteans, were masters of adaptation. Their stories of drowned cities and heroic survivals may be the echoes of dozens of flooded coasts compressed into myth. After all, the sea never forgets, and neither do those who escape it. Far beyond their reputation as fierce warriors, the Celts were master merchants whose trade routes wove a hidden web across ancient Europe, a network so vast it rivaled the Silk Road in ambition. Imagine caravans of ox-drawn wagons laden with gleaming Cornish tin, Bohemian amber warm as captured sunlight, and coarse grey blocks of alpine salt precious cargo moving along rivers and mountain passes from the British Isles to the Black Sea. These weren't random exchanges, they were the lifeblood of a civilization that understood commerce as diplomacy, technology transfer, and sometimes survival. While Rome built roads, the Celts navigated natural highways, the Danube's winding currents, the Loire's fertile banks, and the shadowed trails through the Hercynian forest, where Druids whispered that trees themselves guarded the way. The scale of their trade was staggering. Hallstatt, the Austrian salt mining hub that gave its name to an entire Celtic era, produced white gold so pure Egyptian mummies were found preserved with it centuries later. Meanwhile, Cornwall's tin essential for bronze reached Mycenaean Greece as early as 1200 BC, carried across Gaul on relays of riverboats and porters. But the real shock came in 2019, when isotope analysis of Hungarian Bronze Age artifacts revealed traces of British tin, proving these routes operated millennia earlier than assumed. The Celts didn't just inherit trade networks, they expanded them into an intercontinental system with tolls paid not in coin, but in iron ingots shaped like spits, the original currency that gave us the word pay from Latin pacere, to pacify with iron. Goods flowed both ways. Mediterranean wine amphorae found in German chieftains' graves bore stoppers stamped with Celtic symbols, suggesting local bottling franchises. Greek geographer Strabo wrote of Celtic merchants bartering Baltic amber for Spanish saffron at Massalia's docks, while hordes of Carthaginian glass beads in Ireland hint at secret deals bypassing Roman middlemen. The most revealing finds, though, are the factory graves, tombs like Hochdorf in Germany, where chieftains were buried with scales, folding wooden yardsticks, and even ledgers marked with notches matching the Ogham alphabet. These weren't just traders, they were CEOs of the Iron Age, yet the true genius lay in their flexibility. When Phoenician pirates infested the Atlantic route, Celts pivoted inland, tunneling through the Alps at Hallein to create the Salt Road. When demand for tin crashed after iron's rise, they flooded markets with intricate goldwork, creating new desire. Their greatest legacy, the trade diaspora's enclaves like the Galatians in Turkey or the Skordiskai in Serbia, who became cultural bridges, blending Celtic knotwork with Hellenistic art and Dacian metallurgy. Why does this matter today? Because these routes still whisper beneath modern highways. The A1 in England follows an ancient tin trail, while Paris's left bank was once a Celtic riverside market. The next time you sprinkle salt or admire gold jewelry, remember, you're touching the echoes of a network that bound Europe together long before borders were drawn. The Celts didn't just move goods, they moved ideas, and in doing so, shaped the world we know. In the shadowed glens of ancient Celtic lands, where the moon's glow turned streams to liquid silver, people whispered of those who could shed their human skin like a cloak, men who walked as wolves, not cursed but chosen. Unlike the grotesque werewolves of later European folklore, Celtic shapeshifters were often revered, their transformation seen as a sacred gift rather than a monstrous affliction. Take the legend of Lainach Faelad, an Irish warrior whose name literally meant wolf blood. He wasn't a mindless beast but a berserker who channeled the wolf's ferocity in battle, leading his warband with uncanny instincts. His story echoes the Fianna, elite warriors who slept with wolf pelts to absorb their spirit, blurring the line between man and predator. What set these tales apart from other European werewolf myths? For one, the Celts saw transformation as cyclical, tied to lunar cycles or seasonal rites, not punishment for sin. In the Welsh Mabinogion, the sorcerer Gwydion shape-shifts into a wolf not through curse, but as a strategic disguise, weaving magic and nature into one. Contrast this with Germanic legends, where werewolves were often outcasts or damned souls. The Celtic version was deeply tied to land and loyalty. A chieftain might be called the wolf of his tribe, not for cruelty, but for his protective fierceness, his ability to smell betrayal on the wind like a pack leader. The roots may lie in far older rites. At the Ribemont Sanctuary in France, archaeologists uncovered a pit filled with wolf bones alongside human remains, some showing deliberate cut marks suggesting ceremonial wear. Gaulish coins depict men clad in wolf skins, their bodies mid-transformation, while the famous Gundestrup cauldron from Denmark shows a figure holding a wolf aloft like a sacred emblem. These weren't just symbols, they were remnants of initiation rituals. Young warriors may have ingested hallucinogenic plants like henbane or wore wolf teeth as talismans to invoke the animal's spirit, a practice mirrored in Siberian shamanism. But the most startling parallel comes from medieval Ireland, where legal texts describe the Lobersin wolf men not as monsters but as a recognized class with unique rights. Some historians argue these were fugitives living beyond tribal law, using wolf pelts for camouflage. Others see echoes of a druidic warrior cult, where initiates lived as wolves for years to master survival. Either way, the Celts understood what modern science confirms. The wolf isn't just a predator, It's a mirror reflecting back the wildness we've tried to forget. So next time you hear a howl in the night, remember, to the Celts, it might not be a warning but a reminder. The old boundaries between human and beast were never as solid as we pretend. Somewhere in the darkness, the wolf blood still stirs. When the first light of May dawned across the Celtic world, an ancient fire blazed atop hills, its glow visible for miles, a signal that the gates between worlds had swung open once more. Beltane, the festival marking the start of summer, was no simple celebration. It was a night of raw, unfiltered magic, where the boundaries of the human and divine dissolved in the smoke of sacred bonfires. The air crackled with more than heat, it pulsed with possibility. Cattle were driven between twin pyres to purify them, couples leaped over flames to ensure fertility, and whole villages stayed awake until sunrise, armed with rowan branches to ward off spirits drawn to the firelight. This wasn't superstition. To the Celts, Beltane was a cosmic contract, a pact renewed yearly with the earth itself. The rituals ran deeper than spectacle. At the hill of Uisneach in Ireland, Druids kindled a mother fire using friction from sacred woods, its flames distributed to satellite bonfires across the land. The act wasn't just symbolic, it synchronized communities in a shared moment of rebirth, their fires echoing the returning strength of the sun. But the most potent rites unfolded in the shadows. Young men and women slipped into newly greened forests to bring in the May, returning at dawn with flowers and other evidences of their activities. These weren't scandalous escapades but sacred acts, fertility magic to ensure bountiful crops and healthy livestock. The Celts saw no division between human passion and the land's vitality. Both were threads in the same living tapestry. Suppression came with brutal efficiency. Christian missionaries, horrified by the unabashed sensuality of Beltane, rebranded it as rudmas or outlawed it outright. Bonfires became witch burnings, maypoles were denounced as pagan obscenities, and the old gods were recast as demons. Yet the fire refused to die. In Scotland, peasants secretly built Tain Eigen need fires, claiming their smoke-cured cattle, a thin veneer over the old beliefs. Ireland's Garland Sunday saw flowers hung on holy wells, a quiet nod to Beltane's floral rites. Even the London May Day parade, with its Morris dancers and flower crowns, carries ghostly echoes of Celtic processions. The most startling survival lies in folklore. In the Scottish Highlands, Beltane bannocks, oat cakes baked with 9 knobs, were tossed over shoulders to appease spirits, a practice documented as late as the 1800s. Welsh farmhouses kept Beltane nails hammered into doors to repel evil, while in Cornwall, villagers painted blue protective symbols on livestock, a direct descendant of Druidic wards. Modern pagans relighting Beltane fires atop ancient sites aren't reviving a dead tradition, they're fanning embers that never fully cooled. Perhaps the most poignant legacy is in the land itself. Certain hills still bear names like Beltany or Beltane, their slopes scattered with charcoal from centuries of fires. At Tara, the Lea Fail, Stone of Destiny still stands where kings were crowned on Beltane, its surface warm to the touch on May morning, or so locals swear. The festival's true power wasn't in its flames, but in its refusal to be forgotten. Even now, when the hawthorn blooms and the cuckoo calls, the old magic stirs, not in grand gestures, but in the instinct to light a candle, pick a flower, or stand barefoot in dew-kissed grass, remembering what it means to be part of something wilder than history. Most people know Stonehenge, but scattered across the Celtic world lie hundreds of other stone circles, each with secrets just as profound, and some far stranger. Take the Callanish stones on Scotland's Isle of Lewis, where jagged monoliths spike from the peat like petrified giants. Unlike Stonehenge's orderly ring, Callanish forms a Celtic cross, its arms perfectly aligned to the rising moon every 18.6 years, tracking the lunar standstill, a cycle so precise, modern astronomers only confirmed its intentional design in the 1990s. Or the Beltany stone circle in Ireland, where a solitary carved stone shows a face with hollow eyes, its mouth open in a silent scream. Local lore claims it's not a human face at all, but a warning from the earth itself. What makes these circles different from their famous cousin? For one, their invisibility. While Stonehenge dominates the landscape, many Celtic circles were deliberately camouflaged. The rollright stones in England crouch low in a grove of hawthorns, invisible until your steps away. Archaeologists found evidence they were once painted with woad blue to blend into the horizon, a tactic that may have protected them from Roman destruction. Other sites, like the Luffy stone pair in Northern Ireland, are so small they were mistaken for field boundaries for centuries until someone noticed the taller stone casts no shadow at midsummer noon. The real shock came with Lydear surveys in Wales, revealing circles swallowed by forests or buried under medieval churches. At Bryn Celyn, a passage tomb was found encircled by a hidden ring of stones, their alignment marking not solstices, but the heliacal rising of Sirius, a star the Egyptians tied to the Nile floods. Why would Celts care about an African star? The answer might lie in trade. Tin ingots from Cornwall have been found in Mycenaean tombs, proving transcontinental exchange. Could Druids have traded knowledge too? Destruction tells its own story. Roman accounts describe legionaries toppling circles, not just to demoralize tribes, but because the stones unnerved them. At the sanctuary in Wiltshire, excavation revealed a circle dismantled stone by stone, each piece buried face down, a ritual act to kill their power. Yet some circles fought back. Folklore tells of invaders struck blind or driven mad after damaging certain stones. Modern geologists found a possible explanation. Several Scottish circles stand atop magnetic anomalies, their stones emitting low-frequency vibrations that can induce disorientation. Coincidence? The Druids didn't think so. Perhaps the most haunting circle lies in Brittany's Carnac. Over 3,000 stones stretch for miles, some carved with serpentine grooves that fill with water under certain moonlight, creating the illusion of snakes slithering across rock. Local farmers once avoided plowing near them, insisting the stones moved at night. Then in 1984, a drought revealed the truth. Underground springs channeled beneath the site, their currents shifting the megaliths by millimeters yearly. The Celts didn't just build with stone, they conspired with the land itself. So why does this matter? Because these circles weren't calendars or temples. They were conversations with the stars, the earth, and the unseen. And if you stand in the right place at the right time, you might still hear them whispering. Beneath the rusted swords and golden talks of Celtic archaeology lies a legacy far more fragile threads. What little remains of their textiles whispers of a lost art form as intricate as their metalwork. While burial conditions preserve metal and stone, fabric crumbles to dust, leaving us with only tantalizing fragments. A charred scrap of wool in a chieftain's grave, the ghostly imprint of embroidery on a corroded brooch. Yet these traces reveal a startling truth: the Celts didn't just wear color, they weaponized it. Take woad, the infamous blue dye that painted warriors' skin. Far from just body paint, it was the foundation of a chromatic revolution. Analysis of surviving fabric from Hallstatt salt mines shows woad wasn't merely crushed leaves. It underwent a complex fermentation process, creating a pigment so vivid Roman writers claimed it burned the eyes. But the real mastery lay in blending. By boiling woad with weld, a yellow-flowered plant, and madder root, Celtic dyers produced greens, purples, and russets that put Mediterranean textiles to shame. A single scrap from Denmark's Huldremos woman's garments contained over 15 subtle shades, proof of a gradient dye technique Europe wouldn't see again until Renaissance Venice. The patterns held deeper meanings. Surviving embroidery fragments show spirals that mirror those on torques, suggesting clothing wasn't just adorned, it was enchanted. A cloak from the Hochdorf chieftain's burial bore interlocking lozenges, a design later found carved on boundary stones, implying these stitches may have functioned as territorial markers or kinship badges. Even more intriguing are the hidden knots, stitches so tiny they're invisible from the front, creating raised patterns only detectable by touch. Were these tactile maps for Druids? Prayers woven into fabric, tools tell their own story. In a Welsh hill fort, archaeologists uncovered bone needles finer than modern steel equivalents, alongside miniature looms capable of producing cloth with 200 threads per inch, denser than Egyptian linen. But the most haunting find came from Switzerland, a wooden frame with notches matching the complex warp patterns of twill, proving the Celts invented tartan centuries before the Scots. Why does this vanish from history? Because cloth was currency. Roman accounts describe Celtic mercenaries paid in embroidered cloaks, while Irish law tracts set a king's honor price at 7 cumul of crimson weave. When Rome conquered Gaul, they didn't just take land, they requisitioned entire weaving guilds to serve Roman elites, systematically erasing the art's origins. Yet threads remain. In the Aran Islands, fishermen's sweaters still bear cables said to mimic Old Irish script, while Highland clans preserve patterns first stitched when Britain was forest. The Celts knew something we've forgotten. That cloth isn't just what covers us, it's what connects us, stitch by hidden stitch, to those who came before. When a Celtic warrior cut his palm and clasped hands with his kinsman, it wasn't just a promise, it was a cosmic contract written in blood, one that even death couldn't dissolve. These sacred oaths, known as Gisa, were the invisible glue holding clans together, binding them with rituals so potent, breaking one could allegedly curse entire generations. Unlike modern vows, these weren't spoken lightly over ale or carved into wood. They were performed at liminal spaces, riverbanks at dusk, standing stone slick with rain where the Otherworld leaned close enough to witness. The ritual itself was a mesmerizing blend of violence and reverence. Chronicles describe warriors mixing their blood into shared mead, drinking from horns while Druids chanted invocations to the earth and sky. Some oaths required physical proof, a lock of hair buried at a clan boundary, a fingernail pressed into wax. But the most binding were the Embark hostage oaths, where pledges exchanged personal tokens, often rings or weapons, with the understanding that betrayal meant the token could be used magically against them. A sword gifted under oath, for example, might be melted down and recast into a cursed blade if its giver was wronged. What made these oaths unbreakable? The Celts saw blood as more than fluid. It was a carrier of fur or cosmic truth. Spilling it during an oath wasn't symbolic, it literally mingled the swearer's fates. Irish sagas tell of warriors who reneged on blood pacts only to suffer glom dyson, a wasting sickness where their veins darkened as if the betrayed party's blood was rotting inside them. The infamous Ulster hero Cuchulainn died after violating his jays against eating dog meat. His enemies knew his oath was his Achilles' heel. Archaeology offers chilling corroboration. At the Ribemont Sanctuary in France, a pit held headless skeletons clutching tiny bronze tokens, likely oath breakers executed with their own pledge objects. Even Roman accounts, though biased, admit Celtic auxiliaries in their army would desert en masse if their chieftain's blood oath was violated, proving these bonds outweighed imperial discipline. Yet the most haunting legacy lies in folklore. In the Scottish Highlands, as late as the 1800s, feuding clans would sometimes reconcile by pricking their thumbs and pressing them to a standing stone, whispering, "As the rock outlasts the blood, so shall our word." The stone at Clach-na-Bratach still bears dark stains some swear are iron-rich lichen, while others know better. True power wasn't in the blade but in the bond, and the Celts understood that some promises echo louder than war cries. Off the windswept coast of Wales, where the Irish Sea churns against jagged cliffs, lies an island that once held the dying breath of Celtic resistance, Anglesey, or as the Druids called it, Mon Mam Cymru, the mother of Wales. To the Roman legions marching across Britain in the year 60 AD, this wasn't just another conquest. Anglesey was the spiritual heart of the Celtic world, a sanctuary where Druids had preserved their knowledge for centuries, hidden behind groves of sacred oaks and labyrinthine tidal marshes. The island pulsed with an energy that unnerved even hardened soldiers. Tacitus wrote of forests stiff with enemy altars, where ghostly figures in white robes hurled curses across the strait, their arms raised to a sky blackening with storm clouds. This was no ordinary battlefield. It was a clash of worlds, one fighting for empire, the other for the soul of a civilization. What made Anglesey so sacred? The island was a living library of Druidic wisdom. Its springs were said to heal mortal wounds, its stones to whisper prophecies to those who knew how to listen. At its center stood Nemeton, a grove so ancient local legend claimed its oaks remembered the first sunrise. Here, initiates studied for 20 years, memorizing star charts, herb lore, and poetry so potent it could supposedly stop a spear mid-flight. But the real power lay in its isolation. Surrounded by treacherous tides and hidden sandbars, Anglesey was practically invulnerable until the Romans built flat-bottomed boats to cross at low tide, their engineers outperforming even the Druids' weather magic. The massacre that followed was meticulously recorded by Tacitus, yet his words barely capture the horror. As legionaries waded ashore, they faced not an army, but a nightmare Druids with eyes rolled back in trance, screaming invocation, warrior women with hair like flames brandishing torches, and behind them, civilians chained together in human barricades, their terrified faces lit by sacrificial fires. The Romans hesitated, superstitious dread gripping them, until their commander ordered the torches hurled into the crowd. The flames spread through the dry groves, swallowing prayers and people alike. By dusk, the sacred oaks were charred skeletons, the springs ran red, and the surviving Druids vanished into the island's caves, taking their secrets with them. But the earth remembers. Modern archaeology has uncovered eerie evidence beneath Anglesey's tranquil surface. At Lyn Serig Bog, a peat bog yielded over 150 ritual objects, swords bent into crescents, cauldrons filled with animal bones, even a slave chain with a druid's torque fused to its links by fire. Most chilling was the discovery of a child's skeleton near a standing stone, its hands clasped around a vial of mistletoe pollen, the druid's most sacred plant. Forensic analysis revealed the child hadn't died in the massacre, but decades later, suggesting a remnant of the priesthood survived in hiding, passing rights to the next generation even as Rome stamped out their world above ground. The island's final secret lies in its silence. Unlike other Roman conquests, Anglesey was never rebuilt as a military outpost. No villas or temples rose over the ashes. The legions left quickly, as if the place unnerved them too. Today, farmers still turn up strange finds of polished black stone with Ogham carvings that glow faintly under moonlight, or the occasional bronze figure of a hooded figure, its face deliberately defaced. Locals speak of Sealbran y Derwyd, the Druids' alphabet, hidden in the patterns of migrating birds or the cracks of lightning-struck trees. Anglesey may have fallen, but in its stones, its tides, and the whispers of its oaks, something of the old magic lingers, not as history, but as a warning and a promise. From sacred groves whispering with forgotten prayers to the ghostly remnants of vanished cities, the 25 hidden secrets we've uncovered together reveal the Celts not as the barbarians history branded them, but as innovators, mystics, and visionaries ahead of their time. Think of the precision in their Coligny calendar, tracking celestial movements with near-impossible accuracy, or the psychological warfare woven into their spinning shield designs. Picture the Druids, those living libraries who carried entire sciences in their memories, their knowledge so dangerous it was never written down. Consider the horse goddess Epona, whose cult stretched farther than Rome's reach, or the blood oath so binding they could outlast death itself. Every shattered Ogham stone, every gold torque pulled from the earth, every bog body preserved in the peat, these aren't just artifacts, they're fragments of a world where magic and reality intertwined, where the land itself was alive and listening. Which of these secrets resonated with you most? Was it Boudicca's fiery rebellion, her defiance echoing across 2,000 years, the chilling ritual of the severed heads where enemy skulls became sacred guardians? Or perhaps the haunting truth about Samhain, the night when our modern Halloween traditions whispered their ancient origins? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. History is always richer when we explore it together. And if this journey has left you hungry for more, dive deeper with books like The Celts, a very short introduction by Barry Cunliffe, or the breathtaking documentary series Blood of the Celts. As we close, let's linger on a question that these secrets have whispered again and again. How much of history is truly lost? The Celts left no pyramids, no colosseums, just echoes in the wind, carvings on stones, and stories that refuse to die. Maybe that's their final lesson. Civilizations aren't measured by the monuments they build, but by the mysteries they leave behind. So next time you pass an old oak or feel the chill of a misty morning, remember the past isn't finished speaking. It's just waiting for us to listen.